Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Adrienne Esposito, Executive Director of Citizens Campaign for the Environment. I'm joined today with some great people. We have Dan Rochelle, who's the Acting Director of the Pollinator Initiative for the Natural Resources Defense Council. We also are joined by Moira Alexander, a Master Beekeeper for the Eastern Agricultural Society. And last but absolutely not least, we have with us today Joy Flynn, who not only is a member of the West Hampton Garden Club, but also is the Conservation Chair of the Conservation Chair of the Garden Club of America as well. All folks who have lots of knowledge about bees. Why are we here? Well, we're here today to protect the most important species on the planet, and that is bees. As America and New Yorkers sit down to Thanksgiving dinner and serve their pumpkin pies, their apple pies, their green beans, their corn casseroles, they should be thanking the bees. Yet, as we rely on these species for the very food we eat, they're dying in massive numbers that is unprecedented around the globe. And one of the primary concerns, or one of the primary causes, is neonicotinoid pesticides, also called neonics. Neonicotinoid pesticides cause 3 levels of harm. 1 is they kill bees and other pollinators. 2 is that they pollute our drinking water and our groundwaters. And 3 is that they harm public health. You'll hear lots about the bee die-offs, but I want to mention to you that neonicotinoid pesticides are also the most common pesticide found in Long Island drinking water. And we have 121 of those pesticides found. That study was done by the USGS and also the New York State DEC. Also, these pesticides are very mobile in water, and so they spread throughout our groundwater very quickly and very easily. But neonicotinoids are also responsible for public health threats. They damage heart development. They are known neurological development agents. In other words, they cause harm to developing fetuses. They cause brain damage and birth defects. And we need to get them out of our water, get them out of our food and our air. We are here today because we've worked for 5 long years to pass the Birds and Bees Protection Act. That's a bill that will ban these toxic neonicotinoids from certain crops. It is waiting for Governor Hochul's signature. It is the most important environmental bill on the governor's desk for the end of the year. We only have 7 weeks left. So we're calling on Governor Hochul to sign the Birds and Bees Act without weakening amendments. And Governor Hochul, we don't want half the pie, we want the whole bill. Please sign the Birds and Bees Act. Here to tell us exactly what that bill does is Dan Rochelle from the Natural Resources Defense Council.
So, thank you, Adrienne. Again, I'm Dan Rochelle, Acting Director of NRDC's Pollinator Initiative. I want to talk a little bit about the bill itself. So the Birds and Bees Protection Act is a nationally leading bill that would eliminate approximately 80 to 90% of the neonics going into New York's environment, neonics being probably the most ecologically destructive pesticides we've seen since DDT, and as Adrienne mentioned, also a threat to New Yorkers' health. So the bill is founded in extensive state commissioned report from Cornell University that looked at over 1,100 peer-reviewed papers, basically everything that had been written on neonics in the academic literature up until that time. That report has 2 major findings. The first is that neonic coatings on corn, soybean, and wheat seeds, this is where they literally paint neonics on the outside of a seed, and the idea is that that plant soaks up the pesticides through its roots as it's growing, and every part of it, leaves, roots, pollen, nectar, becomes toxic from the inside out. That these coatings on corn, soybean, and wheat seeds posed substantial risks, but provided no overall economic benefits to farmers. And to break that down a little bit more, very rarely did they provide a yield benefit, but even when they did, it was so marginal that the extra cost of having the pesticide on the seed, because they charge for that, compared to the benefit economically was a wash. That conclusion continues to be confirmed in ongoing statewide field research from Cornell University, and also the experience just over the border in Quebec and Ontario, where they eliminated these seed coatings in 2019, and there have been no reported cases of crop loss or switching to more harmful alternatives. The second big finding from that report is that the non-agricultural lawn and garden uses, likewise, most of the time we're providing no benefits to users treating for pest problems that didn't actually exist, or else they were otherwise easily replaced with safer alternatives. So the bill just targets those two categories of uses, just the coatings on the corn, soybean, and wheat seeds, and the non-agricultural lawn and garden uses. It affects no other agricultural neonic uses, and in fact, it's so tailored that if a soybean farmer wanted to plant a non-neonic treated seed and then later use a neonic in that growing season, the bill would not prohibit that. So the bill does not go as far as Europe's near complete ban on neonic uses, but it is exceptionally well tailored to New York and founded in science, showing that the uses it targets can be eliminated and replaced with nothing or safer alternatives. One last note on the neonic coated corn and soybean seeds. They are by far the largest and most widespread use of neonics in the state. And to give you a sense of scale here, just one neonic treated corn seed has enough active ingredient to kill about 250,000 bees. There are 30,000 seeds of corn planted in a typical acre, and there are over 1 million acres of neonic treated corn planted in New York State every year. For each seed, only 2 to 5% of the neonics make it into the target plant. The other 95+% stay in the soil where they persist for years. They build up from year-over-year use. And as Adrian mentioned, anytime it rains, anytime there's irrigation, watering, lawn watering, those neonics are moving through the environment to contaminate new soil. They travel long distances. They contaminate soil, plant, and water supplies. DEC, due to a regulatory loophole, a massive regulatory loophole, exercises no regulatory jurisdiction over these seeds. And in fact, the most used neonic chemical in New York agriculture was one that DEC refused to permit in New York because of concerns over water contamination and harms to pollinators. But again, because it comes in on the seeds, there's no regulatory oversight. So other states have prohibited neonic lawn and garden uses, including New Jersey and most recently Nevada, where Republican Governor Joe Lombardo signed that ban into law this year. But what makes the New York bill a nationally leading bill is its focus on these seed treatments. Its action on these seed coatings is the true test of Governor Hochul's environmental leadership and her environmental legacy. I've never seen a clearer case a clearer contrast between chemical industry spin and the truth in what's good for New Yorkers. We hope that Governor Hochul can see the difference between fact and fiction too, and sign the Birds and Bees Protection Act into law as is to benefit New York's environment and its people. Thanks.
So, how do neonicotinoids kill bees? Here to tell us is a master beekeeper, Moira Alexander.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Moira Alexander, and I'm an Eastern Apicultural Society Master Beekeeper. I've been keeping bees for over 19 years, and I currently have bees in 5 apiaries, and I am running 26 colonies. I'm a board member of the Long Island Beekeepers Club, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to talk about the problem that bees face. I'd like to start off by saying that I believe that honeybees are the canaries in the coal mine. They are the ones that are indicating to us that there is an active problem with our environment, the environment that they live in and we live in. The consistent loss of over 45% of our colonies, not bees, colonies of bees should be alarming, not only on a national level, state level specifically. I run 100 colonies of bees. Losing 45 of them every single year is a substantial economic loss to me as a beekeeper, but also to the environment that they pollinate. Honeybees play an essential role in pollination of flowers and crops. The state of New York beekeeping industry generates over $300 million in pollination services for the states, with an additional $11 million in the generation of honey sales. Scott McCart, who is the assistant professor of entomology in the College of Agriculture and Life Science in Cornell, just released his results of testing beeswax in the state of New York. He collected samples of beeswax from commercial beekeepers, those beekeepers that have over from 500 to thousands of colonies, backyard beekeepers, those of us that have anywhere from 1 to, 500 colonies, and sideliners, those of us that have 500 to, 50 to 500 colonies. He collected samples also from Long Island and from New York City, and what his findings found was that in every single sample of beeswax there were over 54 fungicides, 33 insecticides, and 22 herbicides, each and every sample averaging about 18 per beeswax sample. Neonics were also very common in the samples. Beeswax is the foundation for the colony. It is where everything takes place. It is where the queen lays the eggs. It is where the eggs are reared from egg to larva to pupa. A young bee emerges and begins her life within the colony. There she stays for 20 days and then begins her life as an outside bee. That beeswax is absorbing these different kinds of pesticides into what the bees live in. So it is not only contaminating the generation that is being born, but future generations, because that beeswax is used over and over again. The queen will lay anywhere from 1,500 eggs to 2,000 eggs a day. The average use of beeswax in the past used to be approximately 8 years. The new recommendation based on these findings is that beeswax within our colonies be replaced within 4 years. That is a tremendous burden on beekeepers and a tremendous burden on the bees within the colony. For every pound of wax that is produced by them through the consumption of honey, they must consume 6 pounds of honey to produce 1 pound of wax. That sets a colony back every time that new beeswax is introduced. Beekeeping is truly a blend of the art and science of reading what bees are telling us. We are always looking at interpreting what they are doing to become better stewards of the hive. Scientists across the country, and this newly released piece of evidence is making it crystal clear. There's no doubt, there's nothing that we can misinterpret, that we're heading in the wrong direction, that we need to take a stand, not only for this moment in time, but for future generations. I like to think that, it's true what the Native Americans say, we don't own the land. The land is something that we use temporarily, and then the next generation comes in and they will use the land. So it is in our interest and in our children's interest and grandchildren's interest that we do something to preserve the land and the water that we live on. And that creating pollinator habitats and restoring biodiversity within agriculture can increase productivity. That crop production should not be a trade-off for the ecology of an area. That applying integrated pest management can also help crop production. That farmers, sorry, my mouth is dry, that farmers, homeowners, and turf growers need to take their roles of stewards of the land seriously. We need to leave the land better, in better shape than we found it. Mark Beal, the New York State Producers Honey Producers President that represents all the beekeepers here in the state, has asked the governor to please sign this bill and help the beekeepers across the state continue to add to the economy of New York State, but also safeguard the land that these bees work for. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker is someone who helps keep Earth's garden. That's what bees do. They're keepers of Earth's garden. So, Joy, tell us how that works.
Thank you so much, Adrienne, for all your decades of work for the environment. I can't thank you enough. Again, I'm Joy Flynn from the West Hampton Garden Club and the Conservation Chair for the Garden Club of America. I'm a member of the Suffolk County Pollinator Pathway Task Force, and I'm representing many of the garden clubs in New York State who are engaged in promoting native plants and healthy pesticide-free yards. The Federated Garden Clubs of America include more than 181 garden clubs with 6,045 members across New York State. GCA has 23 New York clubs with 1,800 members. The GCA nationwide declared April 2023 as Native Plant Month in 5 states, and 5 states passed a law declaring April as Native Plant Month, and 48 of the other states had proclamations or resolutions declaring such. This year, we're continuing the advocacy and expect New York State Legislature to declare April 2024 to be Native Plant Month. For the past 2 years, we've had the pleasure of working with the Natural Resources Defense Council and specifically Dan Rochelle, who has guided us through the whole process to advocate for the Birds and the Bees Protection Act. This year, both state houses passed the bill, and clubs are writing cards and letters asking Governor Hochul to do the right thing and sign this bill into law without amendments. Neonics are killing our pollinators, as you just heard, as you heard from Adrienne and Dan. Pollinators are responsible for not only the beautiful flowers in our gardens, but for farm crops like apples and strawberries and squash. Pollinators are not only the honeybees that you heard so eloquently about in colonies, but there are 400 species of native bees in New York State and over 4,000 nationwide that don't have the PR campaign that the honeybees have, but they are a critical part of our ecosystem. Native bees come in a wide array of sizes, shapes, and colors. They're all varied in their lifestyle. They don't have colonies like we've seen. The places they frequent, the nests they build. And that's why they tell you to leave the leaves, because many times they're nesting under those leaves. The flowers they visit in the season of activity. They remain ignored or unknown by most of us. Yet they provide an invaluable ecosystem service, which is pollination, to 80% of flowering plants. What would our world be like without the beauty of flowering trees, shrubs, and wildflowers? How many of us know that bees pollinate approximately 75% of the fruits, nuts, and vegetables grown in this country? Bees aren't our only pollinators. They get all the attention, but moths and bats and birds and wasps and flies and beetles are all pollinators, and our butterflies, of course. Between habitat loss, climate, excessive outdoor lighting, pesticides, we are at an insect apocalypse, as you've all heard. I view this, that planting native gardens, as we do, to invite these pollinators into our yards, and then spraying them with pesticides or neonics, or the so-called organic pesticides, is like inviting your family and guests to Thanksgiving dinner and serving cyanide in your stuff. Thank you very much.
Adrian, that's like your soundbite last year.
I
I thought it was so great. It went national.
That was
It was
fun.
fantastic.
Well, here's the bottom line. The bottom line is we are working very hard to create a buzz about this bill. We worked on it for 5 years. Governor Hochul, we need you to sign the Birds and Bees Protection Act. 5 years ago, government leaders told us, wait until the study's done by Cornell. And wait, we did. When the study came out, the study concluded that neonicotinoid pesticides are not necessary for greater crop yields. It also concluded that the 3 crops, corn, soy, and wheat, are responsible for 80 to 85% of this toxic pesticide going into our soil, food, and groundwater here in New York State. So we crafted this bill in response to the scientific study created by the state of New York, and now we need the state of New York to support their own science, their own study, and to support public health. That's why we feel so strongly about this bill. This bill is not a luxury item. This bill is a necessity. And as we sit down and be thankful and grateful this Thanksgiving for whatever foods are on our table, we need to be thankful and grateful for bees and the role they play in feeding America, feeding our families, and we have to now be their caretakers as they have been caretakers to us for generations in the past. That's where we are today. Governor Hochul, sign the bill. Thank you.
So you know, Adrian, what
Yes.
the golf course people are saying, and you
Yes.
know what the New York Farm Bureau is
Yes.
saying. Don't let science mess with